you put the flowers. The only downside to it is that the foam needs to be watered regularly because it will dry out and then the flowers will die. So unless it's one of those things, like it's really great for Sundays, but it will not usually last all week unless you have somebody who waters them diligently. But it is a good place to learn on, so that's what we're going to do first. So you start with the greens.
And the other thing is too, these are for more formal arrangements, more formal. Hello. Hi.
Okay, more flowers.
Yeah, more formal arrangements, because you can go kind of like with the like on the church altar for, you know, these are for altar arrangements, and so they're kind of like a triangle, and you can get them to stick out farther and make a bigger arrangement. Whereas a vase is, you know, you can only go out wide so far on a vase.
You're kind of stuck to one shape with a vase, and it's not going to be, it will only be as big as your vase. And so the vases that we have here aren't too big, but with these, you have more control over the height, the style of it, all sorts of things. So
the other thing is too, when you work, you want to kind of, with the height, take in consideration the height of your vase. So as far as how high
to
you
keep,
want.
yeah, to keep the proportions in mind, because you don't want to have like, you know, something super tall on a super short vase. It just would look off.
Is there like?
Usually it's 1.5 times the vase. For this one, we'll go a little bit bigger because it's wider.
So it can handle that.
So it can handle taller. But so if this was like half the size, it would be about up to here. But since it's bigger, I would say about up to here is a pretty good height for that. You just kind of have to eyeball it. If it looks, you can tell pretty easily when it looks off. But just keep the height of the vase in mind with the height of the flowers.
Doing flowers is very easy, really. There's nothing really to it. It's just you poke, and then you keep poking, and then you stand back and look and see if it looks balanced on each side. Is the.
Okay, well, we should probably do it like
Want
this.
to do it this way?
Well, we can arrange it backwards. So I like to start, there's a couple different ways you can do it with I like to kind of start with an outline of the greens first. Some people will do flowers first and then the greens, but I like to get at least a base of the greens first and then go from there.
And then also, I like to work two arrangements at the same. You got two sides of the altar, and you work them at the same time, because that way you can get
A good mirror image.
a good mirror image, exactly.
And so do you guys already have an idea of what you're doing, or like you look at your greens and flowers and then you, in your mind, already know what you're gonna do? Is that?
Sometimes, usually when we pick out the flowers, we kind of have an idea of what we're doing, but since we're working with, you know, other things, we're kind of just going as we, you know, doing it as we go. But yeah, generally you do have kind of an idea of what you're going for when you do it. So.
We can go over to, these are dianthus, and there's 4 types of flowers you want to use. You want to have your primary, like your primary flower would be a rose, or say these are Gerbera daisies. So it's a primary flower, your big flower, kind of the
More the focal point.
of your arrangement. So that would be these daisies, roses, lilies, something like that. That's
Usually a bigger, they're called premium flowers. They're a little more special than, you know, like a daisy or a carnation, although sometimes you can use carnations. They're a big enough flower that they can be a primary one.
and then your secondary flowers are going to be something that's smaller, like
So like a daisy palm, or these are dianthus. So something like that where they're smaller, more of kind of a filler flower,
but
not so much a focal point.
Right.
Although these daisies are massive, so.
they're beautiful. So you got your primary, your secondary, a filler flower, which would be something like baby's breath, or
This would be considered a filler flower. Is this the,
That's all coxcomb.
it's all coxcomb?
But different varieties.
Different
They're
varieties
all
of
from the
it.
celosia. But that would be a primary, the big one.
The big
But
one would
when
be
they're
your
like,
primary, yeah.
because it's a bold flower.
Aster's a
But I
filler.
would use that as a filler, the
Yeah,
little flame
the little
kind.
ones. This is more of a filler flower, so it's smaller, kind of wispy. And then this would definitely be more of a primary. These are gorgeous.
Collect all the seeds from the base.
Oh, I
and
will.
plant them in the
I
spring.
will make use of that.
What are those called? Coxcomb, but they're in the celosia family. So
A
you
good
can
cutting
grow 'em
flower,
now.
like in your home, your home garden, you can, zinnias, coxcomb, that kind of thing. These are called alstroemeria, or else Peruvian
Peruvian lily.
lilies. And these can be a filler, or a secondary flower. And they're good because they kind of take up a lot of room, because, you do your roses and you put those in, you kind of do like a triangle shape of flowers in an arrangement like this. You would like have a main flower here, and then out here and here, because you're gonna wanna go in 1s, 3s, 5s, 7s, as far as, like,
That's just kind of the basic principle of design, is to do it in odd numbers. Not exactly sure why, it just always looks better that way. The other thing to keep, so you want to keep that in mind, just kind of odd numbers, and then also the color, kind of have a color palette too with the flowers that you're doing. So that's just, basic following the color wheel, opposites attract kind of thing. But just kind of have that in the back of your mind too, when you're doing it, because you don't want to have, neon blue roses.
you kind of keeping the same, like, you want muted colors with muted colors as opposed to going, like, having a muted rose and then have a bright, like, something really bright.
Well, and you
Just
can do that too, but just kind of keep it in mind. You don't want something super garish, with something very delicate. So just kind of, honestly, a lot of it is trial and error. When you see them, you'll see that, oh, like this looks really good together, this does not. So just kind of have that in the back of your mind. What was the?
And a prayer to Our Lady at first is always very helpful. It's like, now what do you want on the altar?
What was the fourth type of flowers? You said primary, secondary, filler, and.
I think those are the three.
But there's also a line flower.
A
I
line
said-
flower. We don't have that one right now, but what that would be is if you want to look up like stock or larkspur, they're flowers that are on a stalk, all up and down the
Straight.
stem.
They
And those
look-
are really good for like in the back to kind of to give it structure. So
And
like
height.
in height. So if I were to have like stock or larkspur right now, I would do three. I would do one here, here, and here, and to give me kind of an outline, and then I would fill it in with the primary flowers and then the filler flowers, and that would give you a good framework that you would fill in with the greens and stuff.
So do you at least want to do like 3 of the 4, or do you just 2? Could you just do some like?
You can work with
primary
whatever
and
you
filler?
have.
Okay.
Like I saw a bouquet the other day that all it was different kinds of filler flowers, and it was gorgeous. But for something like this, where there's gonna be up on the altar, it's good to have at least a primary and a secondary. The filler and the line are optional, but to have the focal point flower is pretty important. It's gonna make it a little shorter. The other thing too that's really good to keep in mind is to kind of how I was taught to do flowers when I worked at a flower shop for quite a while, and how they taught me was to design your greens first and then fill in from there. So we're kind of doing that here with just having the background here, but if you were to be doing this same thing in water, you would want to do your greens first. And basically, like, see how we have a whole bouquet of greens here? You would just, make a bouquet out of the greens and then add the flowers in.
Because it also, see here we have something to put the flowers in. In a vase, you're not gonna have anything. So you build you kind of build a framework,
With the greens, a
With-
foundation.
right? And then there's something for your flower to kind of stick into instead of foam. It sticks into the greenery.
It'll hold it up better.
Right.
But we won't worry about that right now. I think we'll probably do another, I'll show you how to do that at a different time. Right now, we're just gonna work on this. I am gonna get rid of this guy because he's broke. All right.
Oh, the other thing about foam, very important, is once you poke into foam, that's where the flower has to stay. If you need to rearrange it, pull it out, you don't like where it is, pull it all the way out and re-poke it into the foam. Don't try to move it in the foam.
Because it will destroy the integrity of the foam, and also pull straight out. Don't just grab it really quick, because that will We've had many a time where we have done a beautiful arrangement of flowers, and then we'll see like, oh no, that rose is crooked, and then we'll go mess with it, and we'll mess with it too much, and then the whole thing, we've had them literally explode.
Yeah,
So try to be careful with the foam because it can be very finicky.
right, you can put one, it can only hold so much, and then you put so many holes in it, you're not gonna.
It will fall apart.
It will fall apart.
And it might happen on the altar.
At ordinations.
It's only happened once. But luckily it happened at the back, so we were able to fix it.
But another reason why is because if you pull it out and just kind of move it, you can lift it up to where there's an air pocket and it's not, because this is its water source. And so if you pull it out, it's not going to be touching its water source as much, and so then this flower will die. So that's why if you pull it out and then re-poke it, it's going to have total contact with the oasis, with its water source. All right, what do you want to do now, Dawn? You want me to
Okay.
get some
Well, yeah, put the, so see how she's kind of got a framework going here? She's starting out with the primary flowers, and then she's going to go on to the secondary.
and try to get your primary, like your top flower, to be your prettiest, best.
The best looking one, because you can hide other ones.
Right.
But this will give you a good foundation, both with the leather leaf and the Gerbera daisies, that you can kind of think of it like sketching out, like before you're gonna paint something, you sketch it out. That's kind of what she's doing here. You kind of go into it with a general shape that you're gonna have, and then you put the flowers and kind of mimic the shape.
And it's very messy.
It
No matter how hard
does. It
you
does
try.
make a big mess.
And then always try to get your flowers, to where they're looking towards you.
Yes. Nothing will drive you nuts. Like when you get into doing flowers, you start to notice the little things. Like it would drive me absolutely batty. I do the flowers for like ordinations or something, and then one rose would be like this, and it would drive me nuts the whole time. And when you start picking up on that, it will distract you from your maps.
It will.
It's horrible.
Let's be for one. I took that one.
The other thing too, this is kind of particular just to Gerberas, but they can have a pretty weak stem, which is why they have these straws on them. So a lot of times people are tempted to just take them off because they think they're, just trash. But what it does is it holds the head up, the neck of the flower up. This one's these straws are a little too big, but if you were to use Gerberas, keep the straws on them because they will keep them from flopping over.
And you can cut the straws.
Yeah.
So.
And also, they're not gonna. You see them now, but you're not gonna see them when it's filled in with greens and the rest of the flowers.
And don't be upset with your original, with what you're first starting, because it always looks terrible at the very
At the very
beginning.
beginning.
And then you just keep working with it, and pretty soon it's like, oh, I
Oh,
like
it's
this.
working.
It's like all of a sudden it just goes, whoo.
Okay.
What do you
I'm
want
gonna
to do?
do. Why don't you do some of the daisies and then the dianthus? Or maybe do the dianthus first and then fill it in with the daisies to see what you can part.
So this is a tall flower, and so
You got it done.
and always start at your longest point,
The
and then
tallest
keep cutting, because you cut too far,
You can't
you
get
can't
it.
get it back, but you can just keep cutting until you like
So you like the high.
what you have.
Okay, technical details. Do you cut straight across, angle? How do you?
You're supposed to cut at an angle, but I have been doing this for a long time and I have not noticed the difference if you cut if you don't
Except
cut it at an
with
angle.
one flower,
Hydrangeas.
hydrangeas. Hydrangeas are very, very
You would never,
particular.
yes, I'm glad you mentioned that because that is the flower that you will never use in foam. So if you were to use them, if you were to, do an arrangement like this in floral foam, do not do a hydrangea because unless you can give it a direct water source. So like they'll have water picks that you can put it in. It's an extra step, it's a bit of a hassle. But that is the only way that they will survive because hydrangeas are the most persnickety flower. They have got to have water.
Yep.
So if you were to do them in water, it would be fine. But in foam, we've tried it, and you don't want dead flowers on the altar after like an hour because
Yeah,
that's
they
what they'll
literally
be.
will. They will just they will just go sad so fast. And
That's why they don't see it.
Yeah.
They don't say hydrangeas up there.
And plus, another thing you have to be careful with too when ordering your flowers is if you're gonna use foam for a particular arrangement, or even with the, in water, certain flowers have really thick stems. Some of the roses have really thick stems, hydrangeas have really thick stems, sunflowers have massive stems. And so what you can do, what happens is, you know, the neck of your vase is only so, the diameter is only so big, and you can only get so many in. And when you're using flowers that have really big stems, that can cause you a problem. So, and then the other thing with the thick stem flowers is you're gonna use a lot of your oasis surface area. And that also, it will chew up your oasis really fast.
It will compromise the oasis really badly as well. There was one time where we did, this was way back when we were just getting started, we did hydrangeas and sunflowers.
Mistake.
It was a big mistake because you have the hydrangeas that died really fast and also have a thick stem. And then you have the sunflowers, which do fine in foam but chew it up. So never do those two together.
And how deep do you have to put those in the foam? Is there a?
Usually about like 1.5 inches. You don't want it to be too long because again you can get too much in there. But you want it in there enough to where it won't come out easily.
And then you do want kind of an order of, you know, if you're gonna put your greens in, put your greens in. And then start with your primary flowers, because that builds your structure of your design. And then do your secondary flowers, and then some people do, you know, a tertiary flower, and then you have your filler, which would be, we could use, this is a filler, it's your smaller flower. That's gonna fill in all of your open spaces.
There's, technically there's 2 ways of doing flowers. You can do it where you have a primary foundation of greens, or you can have a foundation of actual flowers. When you're using just flowers with greens as the accent, it's a lot more expensive because you're using double the flowers. So we like to do greens first and have more greens than flowers because then it's a lot more cost effective.
But we're kind of doing flowers first.
But this is just to give you an idea on how it's put together. It really, when you start doing flowers, you'll figure out kind of what works best for you. When I first started doing flowers, I would do the flowers first and then fill in with greens. But now we kind of do a mix of both. So when you start doing it, you'll figure out the way that is comfortable for you. There really is no right or wrong way with it. It's just people have different preferences for it.
And don't feel bad about when you've got a big spray like this to break it down. You don't have to use all of these flowers in one, you know.
You don't want like a giant clump of daisies over here and then nothing over here. So you feel wrong, like decapitating those poor daisies, but you can stick them in your hair.
Yeah.
They're not going to go to waste.
Or you can even use them to kind of distribute some of the color you want later on.
That's a good point. Like you could put them, if you were to cut some of the daisies
Like
off,
put it
you
down
could put
here.
them down.
Like there,
Just to bring the color down so it's cohesive.
right. And that's where you get them. You know, it's from cutting, you know,
You cut it
cutting
off.
this stem down.
Okay. I'm gonna put some of these in here. These are so pretty.
Let's get these done, and then we can add to those.
You know what we could do with this too? Is I could show them how to do it in water.
Okay.
And just do
Yeah.
one base. So you can have kind of an idea of how to do that too.
Since we have the flowers.
I personally hate floral foam. I grew like my mom and I have been doing flowers for over a decade now, and she taught me how to do it. I started when I was like 13, and then now I have a job as a flower shop, and I'm head of the wedding. So I've kind of seen it all now, and I really hate floral foam. But it's good. It's good for things like this. But it is definitely a bit of a learning curve.
I think it's harder to do flowers to get the effect you want. We disagree on this, to get the effect you want for the altar, because for the altar you want it to be, you know, a grand bouquet, you know, for our Lord. So to me, the best way to do that is foam, and that way you can get this big spray. Now, she's gotten she's far surpassed me now, and she can probably get that in a vase, but it's harder to do.
It definitely, so foam is very good when you're starting out, so I'm not gonna knock it too much, but I will show you like what you can kind of work up to. It's just, it's definitely harder to do flowers in greens, but there are so many more pros to doing them in greens than in foam. They will last longer, you have more, when you get the hang of it, you do have more forgiveness with it. But it's not something you can just pick up right away like foam is. It's very easy to learn in foam.
If you do the water, can you do the side altars? Two side altars.
I'll do the side up to just.
And saints and crucifixes. See, you're doing it.
I'll go get the vases.
Well, one other thing I think we forgot to say is clear your stem, especially in your water, because anything that touches the water, the leaves are going to disintegrate, and flowers smell great, but rotten flowers are the worst smelling thing I think on the face of the earth. So with this Alstro are really great because they last a long time. But some of their leaves can
These
get kind of
leaves
wonky.
get disgusting.
Yeah.
They get slimy and gross and they stink. And also you would be surprised, you would think that you're not gonna have enough greens or it looks so bare, but the leaves down here really do fill it up and not in a good way. It distracts from the flowers. So it's always a good thing to clean off the stem before you start, which is a good thing when you mentioned that, because I completely forgot. Okay, I'm gonna go get them.
Okay. Well, let's do that. Keep going. Yeah. So you see how I kind of go, take one flower, go do this one, then go over here and do this one, and kind of go back and forth. And then you just kind of stand back and look and see
What's
if it's
looking
looking right.
off.
Like what I noticed first off is I've got this one here that's very open, and this one is closed. So it's like, don't like that. So I'm gonna pull him out and replace him with one that is,
More open.
so you got a more cohesive, uniform look. Because you don't want one of your sides of your arrangement
To be lopsided.
to be budded and the other one not, or full blown, because it'll look unbalanced.
And 9 times out of 10 people will not notice that, but when you're doing it, you will notice it and it will drive you nuts. So I'm just gonna save you the headache in the future.
So you do all your primary, your secondary, tertiary, and then your filler, and then, well, you do your filler last.
Okay, so one thing I noticed when I took a step back to look at it is these are wider than those. So that's something that you would, take a step back and look at it. But that these two here just need to come in just a hair. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we still have some. Oh, another thing too is the kind of shorter your arrangement, the less your flowers are gonna look, it's gonna be fuller. Whereas if you have, there's a vase in here.
Just kind of this is more, again, with the keeping in mind the height of the vase. So if you have something short, it's going to be shorter and fuller. Whereas I think she's bringing in a taller vase, you would do, long and lean kind of. So another thing to just kind of keep in mind when you're working on designing it is usually pick your vase first and then, figure out where you're going to put the flowers in before you pick out the flowers.
A vase like this is going to take a lot more flowers than a shorter vase, because you're going to be up really high, and you're just going to have a lot more area to fill in.
Or it depends. It can be a lot. You can have, I would say the
That's
flowers
when
would
you do
be
a lot of
taller.
greens. That's when you do a lot
The
of
flowers
greens.
would be taller, not necessarily like on a vase like this. I wouldn't go out super wide because then it would be tippy.
Mm-hmm.
So you would only probably go out about here, but you could go up to like here if you wanted to, if you had flowers that were tall enough. So just kind of keep in mind with your vase where you would have more flowers, but they would be up higher, not so much wider.
And you can use, and that's where your greens come in. You can get a lot of bang for your buck with greens because there's really beautiful types of greens now. So they actually almost are like a flower.
Right. This
and-
is
But
how
they're cheaper.
They
and they're
are.
cheap.
They're much cheaper. This is actually how they're teaching floral design now. Is they will give you a bucket of greenery, and then have you make a bouquet just with the greens. Because there really is so much you can do with the different textures. And before it was just leather leaf was like the primary green that everybody used. But now we've got, people are using eucalyptus. I can't remember what this one's called. Italian
Grevillea.
ruscus. Grevillea, there we go. This is another kind of eucalyptus. So there's just a lot more greens and textures to play with now.
I love that color of the eucalyptus.
Oh, yeah.
Eucalyptus is so pretty. It's one of the best greens, in my opinion.
And it lasts a long time.
And it smells phenomenal.
It does. It does. Oh, I should have run that through the blue. But there's like, what, 10 different kinds of eucalyptus?
Yes, there's every different kind of eucalyptus under the sun. It's very trendy right now. You'll see it in just about every wedding you go to will have eucalyptus in it. It's a wonderful flower. You can also dry it. You can stick it in your shower. So if you have any leftovers, don't throw it away.
Yeah. So, you know, we've got a basic form, we've got a basic arrangement here, but like we need stuff here, we need here, and here. That way you kind of step back and see where you need to fill in. So you kind of get your initial flowers, primary, secondary, tertiary fillers, and then you go back and see
See where you
What?
need to fill
you
in.
need to fill in.
I would put these here.
Yeah, the red right here.
Yeah.
That would look good. See, because then you kind of, I like to do, like everything kind of balanced on either side. Some arrangements look good depending on the flowers, where it's just flowers everywhere. Other times, but see, to me, especially at Mass, when everything is very ordered, that when you have everything balanced, it just kind of goes right with Mass, you know, instead of having a big, you know, modern mishmash of stuff going on. That's my first one.
Well, it's very divine ratio, actually.
What's
With
that?
everything in nature is ordered, and she likes to mimic that in her flowers. Some people like the wild and like fresh from the garden look, which is fine. But I think for the altar, it just kind of makes it look a little more, you know, special, especially for Sunday Mass or big feast days, to have more structure than, you know, just kind of.
And
loose
what's nice about, like the feast days we have so many different kinds. I mean, you've got your liturgical colors, and you've got green for time after Pentecost, you know, red for any martyrs, so you can use red flowers. Any of the big, like St. Michael, coming up would either be white or yellow, a glorious type of feast day.
Pentecost is another really fun one. What we've always done is we'll try to have like tongues of fire in there. So we'll do red roses and then like have orange, pops of orange. And
Kind of look like it's like on fire, you know, kind of
it's
thing.
fun to do little things like that, which you can do if you're doing more of how would you say that, uniform look. You have more freedom to add in things like that.
But like this here, we're going into October, the month of the Rosary, and so I always thought of like the.
Yeah, joyful, sorrowful, glorious, right there. So you've got the colors of the rosary and the flowers, but that was not intentional.
Yeah, isn't that funny? That just happened. But you know, are these going to be for Sunday?
For Wednesday, St. Michael's.
St. Michael's, the other cover won't last.
Yeah, Sunday is St. Francis.
Oh, that's right.
I think he's moving it from Monday to Sunday.
Oh, because they can do that because it's the church. Is
Yeah, it's yeah.
We wanted to do red there, didn't we?
Yeah.
And you kind of poke it. You want to make sure. Here's another important one learned from experience: is you want to keep your back side straight. You don't want it to be leaning
Here,
forward.
I'm actually gonna tip this one over, turn it around so you can see how it's all up. It's very easy when you're doing foam to have it leaning one way or another, but you try to work from the back to the front. It just keeps everything nice and in line. And sometimes what I'll do with
Leather.
the leather here, this one's a little taller, so, is I will turn it around to where the back is facing the front, and it will kind of keep the flowers more upright as well. And then
I like
you
it
can fill
better.
with the greens.
And
So
plus,
that's, and then see, you have it with this too. You can see how it sticks out that way. It's a little thing, but just turning that one around helps so much, and it makes it look much more uniform.
and the other thing is the back, you want your back side of your arrangement to also look neat. So you're gonna put some greens back there, cause you don't wanna see stems.
You don't want to see stems, and you also don't want to see any of the foam. So it's okay to see foam a little bit at the back, but like we'll show you when we get into these greens. We'll fill in all down here with the greens so that the foam is covered. You don't want to show how you got it to look like that. Alright, what do you need?
Well, we need some in the front. Do you wanna use, we can use the Alstro or?
You maybe use some of the. Yeah, actually, I would use the green palms.
Okay. I don't think I had 2 daisies on the side. I need to get some of those
You've got two over here. Oh, up front.
on the side.
So yeah, you just kind of go back and forth and see. This is why we like doing two at a time, because it can be, you can forget what you